Welcome to another edition of Tips, Tricks, and Oops podcast. I am Eston Talavera.
I'm Therese Gorin.
I'm Sanford Alexander. And we are recording today, July the 9th, 2012. And in Wichita, it's the third day in a row it hasn't hit 100.
Woohoo!
Oh, yay. I forgot all about that. So we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about GPS applications. And the first one we're going to talk about is one that's very difficult to spell and very difficult to kind of say. And it's called Ariadne.
And in introducing Ariadne, I would say that it is one of the GPS applications that was specifically developed for blind and visually impaired people. The developer is a gentleman that lives in Bologna, Italy, and it's fun listening to his tutorials because sometimes you understand what he's saying and sometimes it's a little bit challenging. But his goal was to try to make a tactile GPS that gave you information at the tip of your finger, as well as using VoiceOver on an Apple iPhone or an iPad that would give you the verbal information as well. So it's designed specifically for people with vision issues. It is designed particularly to be helpful with tactile and audio input, and that's one of the things that makes it a little bit unique from a lot of the other apps that are floating around. But Therese ran across something that I found particularly interesting when you start talking about, well, how good is it, or what do people think about it? And before I talk about some of the things I'd like to see it do later on, I think I'd like you to share with us what you ran into, Therese.
Well, what I ran into, I was watching the Apple presentation at and help me remember what the
Worldwide Developers Conference.
That's right, WWDS.
DC.
DC, yeah, because conference is spelled with a C.
Only
Okay.
on certain weeks.
Oh, okay, only on certain weeks. Anyway, they were talking about all of the neat applications that their developers had come up with, and these were people that were attending the conference. And the first thing they showed was a gentleman who was totally blind making his way through a forest. And he said that this is what helps him calm down. He really enjoys walking, but he couldn't have this freedom unless he had the Ariadne GPS. And it allowed him to walk for hours just like he loves to do, but he could stop in the middle of this forest and find out using the GPS, using the Google Maps, which it uses, and he could find out where he was, and then he could decide whether he wanted to turn around and go back the other way. And it was kind of a neat thing that was the first application that they were pointing out. It wasn't that all these applications that are coming out aren't just for games or for fun. They're actually coming up with these applications that are tools that make things more accessible for folks. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I found that interesting when you mentioned that to me, Therese, because first of all, it talked about a fellow that was blind that was using an application. But it also, again, in a subtle sort of way, and maybe it was designed that way, you hate to be cynical, but it goes to the point of how much Apple is thinking in terms of accessibility, that was one of the application parameters that they were concentrating on.
Well, then this was a gentleman that you said you'd been listening to his podcast. He was developing this for folks who are visually impaired. So it was a goal. It wasn't just, oh, this sounds like a cool idea. His intention was to make this accessible for visually impaired people using VoiceOver and the tools that were already built into the phone that he could just take and expand on.
Now, Eston, the issue that I have with that and his demo And I'm thinking of when we were driving up into Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
north of the Kansas border,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a 40-mile stretch that is absolutely a dead zone. Absolutely nothing. There's no cell towers at all. And you said he was in the middle of a forest, Therese?
Mm-hmm.
How do you use a cell phone in an area where you don't have cell towers, which seems to be the problem that I run into? The phone's all set to use it, you say, wow, this is going to be great, we get on the highway, and then you hit a big dead zone like that.
Okay, so remember that when you are using a GPS device, it's not always using just the cell towers to triangulate your location. So it's also using a lot of other information. I don't know how exactly Ariadne does it, but most GPS applications will use the satellites instead of the cell towers. They will use the cell towers to supplement and bring the data to you, which will bring me to another point that I'm going to make later about how Around Me works. And if you are in somewhere where I live, which is a smaller town outside of Wichita, you can't get all of this stuff to work because it has edge coverage, and that is very slow. And I don't think it's because of the GPS per se. I think it's because of the data. So I think you're kind of asking the wrong question. The GPS is probably working fine. It's getting you the data. That's the problem.
Okay. And I went for a long time trying to figure out what company Edge was. And I realized.
Wow.
Well,
you guys keep making fun of me, and I keep telling you, you're dragging me into the 21st century.
Thinking
And it has its sticking points,
Uh-huh.
well, Edge is not technically a company. It's
It's a state of being.
It's a very old
He's a member of
cell
YouTube.
phone. Yeah. The other thing is that it tells me almost exactly where I am usually, within a few feet. I think it's like 33 feet or something, and it tells me like I-35 West, Haven. It tells me the zip code, and I think it tells me the county. I'm not sure.
And you can.
Yeah.
You can do block, neighborhood, zip code, city, state, country.
Okay, so now, see, this is why we want to do these podcasts, is because I didn't realize that number. I did not realize that number was representing the block. And so if I can turn off block, that would make me so much happier, because that's a nonsensical number to me. So I get really confused when it gives me a number. It's like, what does that number mean? And now I have an idea of what that
Well,
means.
and actually it means two different things. Sometimes it's the block number that you're in, and sometimes it's the address numbers of the block you're crossing.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
And I have not yet quite figured out, A, why it jumps back and forth, and B, what it uses to be able to determine when to do that.
Mhm.
But if you're in an area that you get used to it. Like if you're going down the 5500 block of Central and the 5400 block of Central,
Yeah.
and it just says 5307, you're going east or west, and you're set. And then it's a Estelle 455.
Mm.
And Estelle's across the street, and that's and if you know that the 400 block ends at Central,
Mm.
you know that it's giving you the first house south on the west side of the street.
Okay.
So you can kind of do that in an area you know. I think if you went into an area that was very new to you, it would be a little confusing because you're not sure which set of numbers it's giving you.
Yeah, because I would think that Estelle would mean that, okay, the family's last name that lives there is the last name is Estelle.
No.
So that would confuse me as well.
Now, another thing that I use it for, Eston,
Uh-huh.
that you might find interesting since you want to be turning things off and on,
Mm-hmm.
in driving around in Wichita,
Yeah.
if you leave the neighborhood field open, it tells you the name of the neighborhood. I live in Crown Heights.
Oh,
And
yes.
Yeah.
I've always wondered what that meant.
That's what that means. And man, I'll tell you, I have learned more about some of the, because I've been involved in neighborhood associations and the Wichita Independent Neighborhoods, which is a group of neighborhood associations. And when you start getting that information thrown in on the highway, you now know which neighborhood you're going through. And I
Yeah.
find that very, very useful.
I'm not sure I would find a use for it, but now I know where, I have an
You
idea
know what
where
it
to
is.
go to
Gives you
turn it off.
information. Yeah.
Well, Therese, hey, you've used Ariadne a little, right?
I've used it a little, and it's really helpful for me to figure out just where I am on the block. And by giving me house numbers, by giving me streets, if I've reached a street and I can't read the sign, but I know I'm at a corner, then I can look at my map and it'll say, hey, you're at Central you're at Central and Woodlawn.
Oh, okay.
And I might be looking for Central and Edgemore, so I know I have a little bit ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helpful. Or if I am walking along and I may not know, there's a long stretch in between my cross streets, so the house numbers will help me know that
Yep.
I'm going in the right
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah. And what is really very neat is that on this application, it doesn't have a choice of driving mode and walking mode.
Right.
So when you're driving, things are coming by a lot faster.
Oh, yes.
But when you're walking, I mean, it'll give you a house number.
Mhm.
I find it really, really useful,
Mhm.
walking mode, for exactly like what you're saying.
Oh, yes.
And the thing is, if you go look at the map, you've got two settings. You can have it where you start in the center of the screen and north is toward the top of the screen, which is be a conventional map view.
Yeah.
Or you could set it so that you're in the middle of the screen and it's giving you the map of whatever's in front of you.
Mhm.
So if you have it set on that mode and you start walking south, you now have the map of what's coming up ahead of you going toward the south. And that, again, is very helpful if you're in a walking mode where you're in an area, particularly when you don't know.
Now, unfortunately, we can't demonstrate this because we can't.
It's tough.
walk
What I
around.
did do, one of the other things that I like about Ariadne, and I have to tell you a little bit of a story. I have some very good friends that, Bridget moved back to England with her new husband a year or so ago, who lives just south of the Scottish border in a town called Whitehaven, which I recently learned was one of the early exploits in the Revolutionary War. John Paul Jones actually invaded Whitehaven to take a little pressure off of the colonial Navy. And their latitude is about 54 degrees north, which is considerably higher. Wichita is at 37 degrees north, and the Canadian-U.S. border is at about 48 degrees north. So it's north of the Canadian border, but it's also in the Gulf Stream. And so they don't have brutal winters like you'd expect them to have. If you went up as far north in Canada as you do over there, you'd be in real cold weather. And they don't have the real cold weather. They do have snow and whatnot, but they have a very comparatively moderate winter because of the Gulf Stream. Well, I was curious about where that lined up with the North America. And one of the things you can do on Ariadne, which just got knocked out of where I wanted to be, Isn't that fun?
Mhm.
I want to do a look around. So I'm going to go back in there. And yeah, that little squirt was, I'm on a street. And I just got onto a street.
Mhm.
And I'm walking around and it's,
Now, is it
Vibrate.
vibrating while you walk?
there it did. And that means I'm on the street. When it stops vibrating, you're off the street.
That's interesting.
So you kind of have to find where you are.
Mm.
And there we are on Government Center. And I'm going to make it a little bit louder.
And a little slower too.
Oh, you want everything.
Speech rate. 60%.
All right.
Map.
Okay, so that's a street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That means I got onto the street, but I ran off the map, so I got to come back down.
Okay.
I'm trying to find.
Now, can you zoom in a little?
Well, I'm
Main
going
Street 604.
North Main Street 604, which would be the block south of Envision.
Mhm.
End Market State 609 downtown.
So that
So
was
that's
North
609.
Market, 609.
Mhm.
So that's going one block to the east, and I had gone to the right of where I had been, so using the true north, that
Correct.
would work.
Yeah.
Now, if I want to zoom on this,
Mhm.
and I have to play with this, but you use your
Down. Map center changed.
map center changed, which means now
Map.
I'm someplace else.
And it seems to be a little bit tricky as to how the zoom exactly works.
Yeah,
But
Map.
see, Sanford has gotten a lot further
End
than I
Market State
have
134 downtown.
because I can't get it to make that popping sound when I get
but
on the
now,
streets.
if I do,
55%. 60%.
It's in the rotor.
no, I don't want the rotor.
Right. Map center changed.
That's,
Left.
you can change the center of your map. I'm trying to find,
Map. 65%.
I don't want to get out of there.
Zoom. Map center changed. Zoom 20x. Map
Now,
center changed.
now I'm at
The
28,
area shown covers 700 feet.
and it
Exploring streets
covers
and numbers.
700 feet,
Okay.
Mhm.
and that's 700 square feet. So
Mhm.
it's a very, very tiny
Zoom
area.
20x.
Mhm.
Zoom 19x. Zoom 18x.
Okay.
The area shown covers 2,800 feet. Exploring streets and numbers.
So now I can explore streets and numbers, and it's a little bit more of a map to look at. I want to go back quite a bit.
Map.
Let
Zoom
me-
17. Zoom 4. Zoom 12x. Zoom 10. Zoom 9. Zoom 8. Zoom 7x. The area shown covers 977.79 miles. Exploring areas.
Wow.
977 miles. Now,
Map.
if I trace around,
Now you can even hear that vibration.
Map.
Oh.
but I'm looking for something in particular, and I'm not, yeah.
Oh boy.
I believe Sanford just went for a swim.
Sanford's in the middle of the water.
And I would think that's probably the South Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
But what I did, and actually on the iPad, which gives you a much bigger map, it's a little bit easier to
Oh,
play
yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I found Whitehaven, England, and when I traced my finger due west from there, it came across the North Atlantic, it
Mhm.
found Canada, and it came across Canada till I got to the I guess it was either the Barents Sea or the far north piece of the Pacific.
Mhm.
But when you get into water,
Map. Map.
it'll give you that water noise. So it gives you sounds. And
Yes.
you
That's
can
very
do,
nice.
that's a geography issue.
Mhm.
I think an application might be for, like I did, I wanted to see geographically. I had at one point, if you zoom it down to 2 or 3, you can go almost from the North Pole down almost to the equator.
My.
It's a big piece of territory.
I guess.
Yeah, and it gives you a chance to really do some geography tactily that you couldn't do.
Mhm. But,
Well,
so
yeah.
that would have implications for people that want to do some geography lessons and say, what is north of this location?
Yes.
And you could do that if you wanted to. However, most people will just use it in a consumer base and use it for
Well,
consumers.
We
How much
we do
was
different
this
things.
application?
Excuse me?
How much was the application?
$5?
It was either $3.99 or $4.99,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
As
expensive.
in 99 cents, $4.99.
Yeah,
Right.
99 cents.
Right, and the other thing, now I was using the Explore Look Around,
Correct.
the Look Around function.
Yeah.
And that looks around from where you are, and it makes
Yeah.
the map right in the middle of where you're standing.
Okay.
If you use the Explore Area function, you have to put an address or a coordinate in, and then it will give you that map from that point.
Mhm.
So if I wanted to go out and check out your neighborhood out in Hutchinson, I could put in your address, Eston,
Uh-huh.
and then look around, and it'll be looking around from your address.
Yeah, yeah.
And that'll work virtually anywhere in the world.
Which, by the way, is a little bit scary when you think anybody in the world, if they have your address, can look at it from pretty much any point. But we've been able to do that for
For a while.
It'd be from a stalker's point of
Ever.
view.
Yeah.
It'd be very handy.
Now, the other thing that it does do that we will use as an application is, let's say you're on a trip and you have your home as a favorite, and it will tell you how far you are from your home
Yes.
when you go into it.
That's
Yes.
very handy.
Yes,
And
it
that's
is.
kind of handy.
Mhm.
And if you do as you said, you can check your speedometer,
Yeah.
and that'll give you that too.
And,
But if
yeah.
you wanted to see how far you are from home at any given point, it'll give it to you.
Correct.
Now, what I'd love to see Ariadne do in a future release, because I haven't been able to find it in the options that are available now,
Mhm.
is the ability to do a turn-by-turn route.
Yeah.
That
Well,
would be nice.
I'll tell you what, we'll cover this in a second and possibly on the next podcast, but Around Me is what I use to do the turn-by-turn stuff.
The other thing that I like about it is that it does give you the tactile, it does give you the audio, it does give you a lot of capability to move, explore, and it does give you the ability, when you're walking around, it's really fabulous. And Eston and I use it as totally blind individuals that travel with guide dogs, and Therese, you use it as a person that has some
As
good
a low
travel
vision.
vision.
Mhm.
So it works for the whole spectrum of
Mhm.
vision pretty effectively.
I may not be able to tell you where I can't read the signs. So I may be able to tell you, I know where I'm at, but I don't know if I have two
Mhm.
more streets to cross or three. So it's a great application to tell me where I'm at and just to give me, oh yeah, I remember now I have two more.
In
more
that
streets to
sense, it's like
cross,
walking
or-
around with an atlas in your pocket.
Yeah.
You can always find out exactly where you
Mhm.
are and exactly what's around you,
Mhm.
wherever you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And
as long as you don't have edge cell coverage.
Right.
That's right.
Well, that's our episode for this afternoon, and I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Eston Talavera.
I'm Therese Corn.
And Sanford Alexander.
Thank you very much.